Okay, barring that, let's play. Contrary to popular belief or potential popular belief, this is not the noob session. The content covered in this session is actually quite challenging content, and it's stuff that I struggle with myself on a regular basis. So case construction is essentially making sure you have material that lasts to the end of the debate, where the adjudicator says, hey, that team said some really good stuff, and that stuff has stuck in my head. By the way, I'm Keefe, and this is, debating foreplay, preparing well. The title is credited to Stephen Moore. He's like the blonde guy. I know it's not very specific, but I'm just presenting the stuff he came up with the title. Cool. Hi, I'm so happy to see so many people here. It's very heartwarming. Okay, concepts. This is the stuff we're going to cover today. Broadly speaking, we're going to talk about two big things. The second thing is a lot bigger. The first thing we're going to talk about is just very broadly different types of debates and the sorts of approaches you might need to use to approach them. Exactly. And the second area we're going to talk about is case construction, and we're going to talk about the 4 slices of pizza, reflecting the stuff we eat in an hour. Perspective, and by that I mean the sort of ideas and values you bring from one side of a debate. The second is imperative, which is why should the adjudicator care about your side? Because your side has to bring a big problem that you're claiming to solve. The third is clarity and direction, which is you now have a big idea in your head. You have to, as clearly as possible, communicate that to the adjudicator so that they understand exactly what you're doing. And fourthly, we're going to touch briefly on argument structure and the sort of common pitfalls that most people fall for. Why do I keep doing this? What? Yeah, that's a joke. Okay. Where this presentation fits into the whole member training regimen. So I think in the past few weeks, most of you have attended sort of introductory lectures on the format of debating and how long speeches go for. You already know the formalities. This session is about how you start winning debates, not just going into a debate and giving a 6-minute or a 5-minute speech and like making time. It's about how to win a debate against your opponent. So I'm also not very familiar with what you covered previously, so if there's anything very repetitive, tell me if you've covered it before. And also, if I'm asking a question and you have an answer in your head, just like pop it out. Doesn't matter if you're wrong. We're all wrong all the time. And we have a bit of stuff to cover, so do that. Okay, first big idea, types of debates. You're probably most familiar with a policy debate. A policy debate is where the motion says there is something that you should do. For example, this house would ban the use of cigarettes. It is usually very specific. It's usually quite intuitive which person would be doing it. So in the case of cigarettes, it will be the government banning, say, the import of cigarettes and the sale of cigarettes. Those are the sorts of debates which you're quite familiar with. You need to have a model, which is a thing you are doing, and you explain whether that model is a good thing or not. What you're probably not so familiar with are value judgment debates. So things indicative of value judgment debates are words like, this house believes that, this house regrets, and like conversely, this house supports. And a good example is, for example, this house regrets organized religion. I mean, I'm not saying I support that, but I'm just saying that's a motion. So obviously, in this motion, you see there's no specific policy you're asking a government or a person to do. You're just saying whether you oppose or accept a certain set of ideas inherent within the words of the motion. So they are usually just more general versions of policy debates. So there are still things that you have to oppose or support. They're just not so specific as to be policies which can be, written down into bills and passed in parliaments. The key to them is to state what you support and what you oppose. Now, this motion is actually a semi-final motion from Worlds 2010 in Botswana. And it's actually a pretty good example of a sort of good government team telling the adjudicator what they support and what they oppose. So what they said was, when they say you regret organized religion, what they oppose specifically is the organization and hierarchy that has been manifested within sort of modern religions, as opposed to decentralized religions, such as the Quakers, who sort of run their own little churches, have their own sort of subjective spins on doctrine without a central authority, for like the Catholic Church probably does, which is, and that religion is probably more hierarchical compared to Quakers. So if you're approaching these motions, you probably want to give examples of the things you support and you oppose, other than just giving the principles of the things you support and oppose. And that's something I did just now. Let's, let me see. Okay, a variation, we'll get to some examples and we'll work through some examples together, so don't worry if you don't understand it yet. A variation on this type of debate is an event-type debate, where the motion usually says we regret a certain event or we support a certain event. For example, a motion could be that we support the rise of micro-parties in Australia. So the context of that debate is probably quite specific in the sense that it's like thinking about Jack Moore and his car party. What was it called again? Yeah, that one. But obviously, as you can see, value judgment debates and a subset of that, which is the event-type debates, talk about a set of phenomena that you want to like support or oppose. Okay, exercise. So remember what I said just now. You have to talk about the things you support or oppose, broadly speaking, in principle, but then you also have to give an example of that principle. So I will give you a motion, and someone give me the principle and the example of that principle. This house regrets hookup culture. What is it about hookup culture that someone might oppose in principle?
The aspect of people being forced, or not being forced, but being locked into a certain situation with someone else, rather than having an opportunity to go out into the world.
Oh no! Oh, sorry. This house regrets. So you're speaking against hookup culture.
Yeah, no, that would be like a regret of hookup culture is that it forces people into ascribing to you need to hook up with that person, hook up with that person, rather than leaving a person available to look for any various relationships with
Cool.
other ways.
Excellent. Can you give me a specific manifestation of that principle into a social situation?
Yeah, so basically when you're looking at a situation where you're in a group of friends and if the culture is you need to hook up with the best available person right now. Oh, I need to grab, yeah. So as opposed to a more relaxed society where it's okay, you can organically talk to people and accrue certain friends and certain people to talk to and relate to outside of some kind of construct.
Very good answer. What I'd add to that is that you could probably add certain contexts to that sort of example. So it's not just that you're forced to hook up with people in general, but probably when you go to university, at university social events, when you're like going on schoolies. I'm not sure what schoolies is, but it's like an Australian thing, right? Okay, next one. This house believes that economic development should be prioritized ahead of political freedom. Can you give me the overarching, like a possible overarching principle that a team believing this might say? Peter.
Real wealth, like getting a bridge, air conditioning, actual valuable things that can improve your life are better than the right to information.
Yep. And can you give me some specific policies that a team on the affirmative side of this motion might support? Yep. Yeah, Ken, if you want to, yep. Can you give me an example of a policy?
The politics of China, like on one hand, you continually reform your economic sector, like you attract a lot of foreign investment, you open your like economic policies to the world, you become like the factory of the world actually, and you actually
Yeah.
bring prosperity also to like Southeast Asia, which China and Southeast Asia combined to be like the factory of the world now. But on the other hand, you continually surprise like political dissidents, you resist political progress, you pre-select the delegates to the Congress of the National Congress.
Yep.
So that is, I think, China is
Yep.
the typical example.
Excellent example. So like supporting policies that like encourage growth, but then like hurting political dissent and not having free elections. Finally, this house supports individuals using sexuality to advance in the workplace. What is a possible principle that you might support here? Yeah.
Yes, so basically the idea is...
Oh, sorry, I think you wanted to say something. Yeah.
Drawing a difference between one's abilities to perform their job well and one's innate sexual abilities is arbitrary.
Excellent. Okay, so what policy might an office which wants to encourage sexuality in its workplace, can you give me an example of a manifestation of that idea? Yeah, attire, so like freaking bikinis in the workplace, right? Or like, not to be purely sexist, but also like dudes having their junk hanging out. That sort of stuff. Okay, so to distill that, when you're approaching a value judgment debate, have a clear idea of the things that you're supporting, both in abstract and in a specific sense, but also have an idea of the things you're opposing. So I didn't talk much about that. So for example, if you are a team supporting more sexuality in the workplace, you would be opposing things like suits which like cover up the body, or like, I don't know, you'd be opposing people like hooking up within the office, that sort of thing. So you have to have a clear idea of what you support and you oppose. Let's talk about the first slice of the pizza, perspective. All of you here are probably capable of coming up with individual arguments on each side of the topic. But debating is far more than just individual arguments. It is about a set of arguments that fit well together to persuade the adjudicator that something is right or wrong. So you have to stop thinking about individual arguments and start thinking about the sorts of people who might hold these views. So for example, if you're talking about, say, abortion, raising an argument about the right to life by itself is not completely persuasive if you do not integrate the rest of the ideology that someone who holds that opinion might have, like sort of the sanctity of life, the sanctity of what it means to be a mother, to be a father, and to have a child. Though there are a lot of more things that go into arguments than just the individual arguments themselves. So what sort of person would you be on the side of the emotion? Would you be like a left-wing sort of Labour type person? Would you be like a far left-wing Greens person, or would you be like a liberal? But also something which is very important is to not just identify your values, but to identify the differences in values between you and your opposition. So if you're talking about something like abortion, talking about, for example, the economic cost of the abortion probably isn't very contentious because the other side doesn't really care about it all that much. Where the two sides really begin to diverge is whether, for example, the fetus is alive, whether the mother should have a choice in sort of removing that fetus. Those are things which are contentious, and those are the things which should be debated. Okay, shit, I already done one. So for this exercise, I want you to take the side of the affirmative team. Tell me what your values are, and how do they diverge from the side opposite you. Okay, this house would tax the rich until they cry. What sort of person would you be? Sorry, raise your hands. I can't see where the voices are coming from. Sorry, raise your hands. Okay, go. Yep. What sort of values would you have? Yeah. Oh wait, no. Oh yeah. By liberal you mean like left wing, right? Not like Liberal Party. Okay, yeah. Okay, sorry. Equality. Go on. And where do you begin to diverge with your opposition? What are things you disagree on?
Well, Australian liberals
Yep.
would want to have the same taxes for everyone, no matter how much you would earn.
Yep.
Whereas Labor would want more, as much as you earn, to be like
Yeah.
a percentage. On
Yeah.
the
But what, okay, that's the difference in policy, but what are the ideological underpinnings between that difference in policy? Yeah. Mm. 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 Amazing. That's a great answer. So obviously what's different here is both sides have very different ideas of what justice and fairness are, and that will be the debate. So to summarize this bit of the presentation, when you get the topic later on, try to think of what sort of person would you be in the real world. And like, no matter how repugnant you might imagine that person to be, try to stand in their shoes for a second and imagine the sorts of slogans and catchphrases they'd be saying and build arguments of them. Obviously in a more palatable form if you feel like they're not very nice. Imperative. So now we have a perspective of what sort of person you are. You might be a liberal, you might be like a right-wing person, a liberal, you might be a right-wing person. Right now, you need to get the adjudicator to care about your position. You need to have an imperative which says, this ideology is important and this is something that should be supported. Imperative is also very important because it provides context. You cannot debate a motion without giving it real-world examples and pointing out how this would play out in the real world. You might think it can, but once you start adjudicating, you'll realize that if debaters do not give examples and context, the debate just like flies into randomness. Okay. You will have a bundle. That bundle is called your imperative. And within them, within it will be individual sticks. Problems, trends, tipping points, and what I call exhaustion. Problems are what I mean by you pointing at a situation and saying there's something wrong here. It doesn't matter what's wrong about it, but just that something's wrong. So, example, this house would invade Iraq. Can someone give me a potential problem that might need intervention for?
So we've already tried to train their army against another party president. But in order to do the research, we don't have to.
That's good, but it's a lot more advanced than I expected. So what I expected was like people are dying there. Your stuff fits into exhaustion, right? Like we've tried everything else and it isn't working. So a problem just means there's something wrong there, we need to fix it. Trends, which is something you also integrated into your point, which is excellent, is that thing isn't getting better, it's in fact getting worse and we need to act right now. So, can someone give me a trend in a motion, this house would aggressively tax fossil fuels? Give me a trend. Peter.
global warming that CO2 emissions are rising and if we don't do something soon, then it could result in real temperatures rising so much we can't deal with it.
Yeah, perfect. So that's a trend. A trend is saying that something's getting worse, we need to act now. A tipping point is like pointing to a particular part of a trend and saying we have passed the point of no return or past a certain critical point that we absolutely have to act now. Tipping point. Motion, let me see, problems in the world. Okay, like freaking deforestation. This house would aggressively kill people who chop forests. Can someone give me a potential tipping point? It doesn't matter how crazy that idea is as long as it satisfies the criteria.
All the forests are gone.
Yeah, okay, yeah. All the forests are gone, and if we don't act sort of within the next...
When the killing of people outweighs the destroying of deforestation. So the idea being
Yeah.
that if you kill more people, then you're saving through the lack of deforestation.
Oh, that's a bit different. That's like justifying what you're doing. But like a tipping point is saying that if we don't act now, all will be lost. So if we don't stop the forest from dying, we will lose like half our flora and fauna irreversibly. Okay, exhaustion. Exhaustion is saying that you have tried everything else that you could possibly try. That's why you need to do the thing that you are proposing now, because it's our last resort. And the example was, and the example raised earlier was excellent, right? Like by saying, we need to invade Iraq now because everything else we've tried, diplomatic solutions, giving foreign aid, you know, using airstrikes and drones, have not worked. That's why we need a full ground invasion, and that's why you need to support us. So later, when you're doing a motion, write these things down. Even if you're with someone who's a lot older than you, saying to them, do we have a problem, do we have a trend, will make you sound really, really smart, and it's actually useful, so do it. Okay, exercise. This house would limit parents in India to having a single child. Give me a problem. Yep. Someone else give me a trend. Yep. Someone give me a tipping point. Potential, like just cook up. Sorry? Yeah, absolutely. And like there's like a freaking drought in the northern part of India. People are dying. Everything's like tipping past the point. Exhaustion. Sorry. Yep. Sorry? Oh yeah, like giving sort of contraception, etc. Right? Excellent. Good. You guys are very good learners. This is a hamster eating a burrito. It means we've reached like halfway through the presentation. Not all imperatives are created equally. Some imperatives are strong. Some imperatives are weak. Your intention is to have an imperative that's stronger than the opposition's. The first sort, which is the weaker sort of imperative, is a mere want with a possible harm to yourself. This sounds very vague, but I'll give you an example. So, if the motion is, this house would guarantee the legalization of gambling, right? A possible affirmative team might say, we want people to have the freedom to gamble because it makes them very, very happy. We recognize that a small proportion of them, or even a medium-sized proportion of them, will become chronic gamblers and will destroy their lives. But that is fine because it makes them happy. So, that is an imperative, but I think you can intuitively understand why it's a weak imperative, because the benefits are quite small, it's just a mere want, and the harms are possible but quite big. Let's move to a mediocre form of imperative, a mere want but no harm. So, an example I gave is, for example, this house would legalize incestuous relationships between parents and children. So, oh wait, there's a harm there, what am I doing? This house would legalize gay marriage in Australia. And I don't mean to suggest that it's like a mere want, but in a debate, your benefit you're bringing to the table is probably the sort of subjective satisfaction of those couples being able to have legal union. But you also say the fact that this doesn't harm anyone at all means that the government should support this so much more. This is a stronger imperative as compared to the first one, but it's still sort of mediocre. The strongest possible imperative, and the imperative you should be doing in every debate, is to say that if we don't do this, someone will be hurt. So for example, to use the gay marriage example again, instead of saying this is something that some people might want, you should say, if we do not legalize gay marriage, it is essentially an affront to the dignity of each person who identifies as gay. Not granting them legal rights and legal status is an attack on their dignity, and it's something that we cannot tolerate. So by framing them as being hurt by something like affront, you know, like offense, it generates the strongest possible imperative that you can use. So when you're making imperative, make sure you have a victim, people are oppressing them. Good. Like, not good, but like, always think about who will be hurt. Like, visualize who will be the victim. Be very clear about who those people are and make the adjudicator sympathize with them. Okay, so with all those principles in your head, practically speaking in the prep room, what should you be doing? Write down your labels. What I do, and I swear by this, and that's why I think it's appropriate to advise you guys because it actually works for me, is to write down clear labels on your sheets of paper, especially if you're first speakers. First thing, write down problem. And then you like bang out a problem, a trend, a tipping point, and why the status quo is not working, i.e. exhaustion. Yeah, that stuff. But, yeah, you'd also point out what the current outcomes are and say that this is all really bad, we need to act. This might seem sort of really banal, but even I sort of forget these things from time to time, and it's really useful to write them down. So, if you're a negative team and you're dealing with an affirmative team with a very, very strong imperative, what the hell do you do? The first thing you do is to have an imperative of your own. This is what I call like the debating judo throw, right? The affirmative team will say, ha, bottles are being oppressed. We need to care about bottles. A good neg team says, but have you thought about Coke bottles? Cans, whatever. It might seem like obviously sort of contextualize that in like debating terms, but a negative team will always have their own imperative, they always have their own problem, their own victim, that will cause the adjudicator to forget about what the affirmative team has brought up. But the next thing you also have to do is implicitly defend the status quo and to explain why possibly we haven't tried everything that could work, and possibly why things aren't getting worse, they're in fact getting better. So by we will do something else, I mean, because usually affirmative teams will say, the status quo isn't working, that's why we need something else. But a sneaky negative team will say, but we didn't plan to do the status quo. Obviously, we are planning to do X, Y, and Z, and you need to oppose to that. You need to oppose that. Can people understand why that might be a smart negative tactic? Because if it's done right, it can render like half to more of the affirmative team's material irrelevant. But it only works in certain cases, and it's like a high risk, high reward sort of thing. Things are getting better is something you should always do. Try to explain why the status quo is improving. But you should always say, even if things aren't getting better, their policy will make things worse for this other thing, and this other thing is so much more important that it's like worth it to ignore the plight of the blue water bottles, care about the green, not green, like red tin cans. Yeah, contextualize that in your terms. But those labels are handy. We'll do something else, things are getting better. Our stuff is more important. Okay, we're done with the second slice of pizza. Let's talk about the third slice of pizza, which is clarity. Clarity wins you debates. Being clear is the single most underrated skill in all of debating. We frequently overestimate the things we understand and sort of extrapolate that and assume that the adjudicator understands what's going on in our head. I'm probably doing that to some degree now. That's why I'm trying to be clear, and I have slides. So what I wrote up there is that it is sometimes, it's not sometimes, but most of the time, it is better to have a radical and crazy idea, which is clear, rather than have a moderate or defensible idea, which is sort of unclear. Okay? Debating is a sport where it's fine to be crazy as long as you can justify why that craziness exists. So clarity wins debates. For affirmative teams, what does this mean? You think about clarity, especially when you're talking about your models. So in, say, a first F speech, you have your problem, and that usually takes up the first sheet of my first sheet of paper for me. But my second sheet of paper is always what I label clarity. What am I going to do? What will the process of what I'm going to do be like? What is the outcome of the thing I expect? What is the outcome I expect? So for example, when you're talking about, say, this house would intervene in Iraq or Syria or whatever, the first thing you talk about is what will you do? in this case, you'd say we will launch a ground invasion supported by like a naval force and like full-on airstrikes. Okay, this will be funded by the U.S. It will be coordinated with NATO and the United Nations. Okay, roughly, like the adjudicator roughly understands what's going to happen. It's going to be like hell, right? Like, yeah. But you also have to explain the process. And by process, I mean, you don't just have to explain what you're going to do. You have to explain what you think the response will be to the thing you're going to do. So when I'm explaining the process, I'll be explaining something like, we expect the bad guys. We expect ISIS to put up a fight in the short term, but we also expect them to lose relatively quickly because of the superior military force of the United States plus NATO plus the UN. We expect there to be a loss of lives in the short term, but over the long term, we expect there to be peace and like democratic processes will kick in. The importance of that is that it means that you're not just thinking about the immediate short term, you're also thinking about the medium to long term. And speaking about long term, you also have to talk about the expected outcome. So if your intention is peace, say that your intention is peace, even if you might not be sort of 100% confident of managing to prove that. Be very clear about what your outcome is like. So be sure what you want to do, what the process will be, and what the outcome will be. Like literally, write that down on your paper. It's good. And obviously be as specific as you can, give examples. So in that motion, you'd say, we will strike ISIS's strongholds along the border of Syria and Iraq. And we will prevent troop movements across the border because that's what ISIS used to do. They'll not be able to do that anymore. Specificity gives you not just clarity, but it also gives you authority. That's very good. Okay. So if you're a negative team and you're going against an affirmative team who's like super clear, like it's okay. You even know like the serial numbers on the bullets they're going to shoot and the model numbers of the missiles they're going to fire. The best weapon against that is to be as clear about what you're going to do as they are. So if you are a negative team defending the status quo and saying ISIS is only a temporary phenomenon and will go away soon, say that. But if you want to do something else, for example, we support funding the Iraqi military, but not America invading that country, state that that is the thing you support. But also in motions where it isn't a clear-cut policy, so if it's like a value judgment debate, for example, this house regrets hookup culture, state what you stand for. So for example, in the hookup culture one, you would say, what we stand for is individuals being able to realize their sexuality, which is possibly the single most intense form of happiness that anyone can ever experience. Sounds facetious, say it well, it actually works. The point is, you have to state what you stand for very clearly, explicitly at the start of your first next speech. Common pitfalls. This doesn't really relate to clarity, but it's something that Tom wanted me to include because neg teams do this a lot. It's not good. So common threads of analysis which aren't good. Some negative teams say, okay, for example, the motion is this house would ban prostitution. Some negative teams say, but we only have a limited amount of police. You cannot possibly catch every prostitute out there, therefore your policy fails. That is a bad line of reasoning, or at least it's a bad line of argumentation, because it centers the debate on something very trivial. It centers the debate on whether, say, the Australian police force has enough staff, which is not what the debate is meant to be about. What the debate is meant to be about is like whether sort of people should be able to use sex to earn money, right? That's the real debate. Saying something won't work usually shifts the debate to like really bad stuff, and it lowers the scores of both teams. Don't do that. Some teams also do we don't have to defend that line. So, for example, in the motion, this house regrets organized religion. Imagine the first affirmative speaker coming up and giving a very sort of strident speech on why the Catholic Church is evil, or why, really structured Buddhist temples are evil. And then the first negative speaker comes out and says, oh, we don't have to defend the most extreme hierarchical forms of churches and temples and mosques. What we defend are moderate churches and mosques. Can people sort of have a grasp of why that isn't the best line of attack that the negative team can take? It's because it retreats from engagement rather than engages in engagement. And the best debates are ones where there are really clear points and really strong and radical ideas coming out from both sides. Those are the best debates, and we want to see that sort of debates. And you'll probably enjoy having that sort of debate as well. So, if you're on the negative team, you have to support something positively. You shouldn't just negate. You always have to state a set of ideas that you defend. So, be an optimist prime, don't be a pure negatron. I use this as my profile picture when I was in year 9, something. It was very cool. Final part, argument structuring. Most of you probably know how to structure an argument intuitively, right? Like you will say things and something bad happens, that's why you shouldn't do it. That probably works to some point, but at some stage you have to have a structure for your arguments so that you can sort of critique and understand which parts aren't working and which parts sort of can be improved. But also, sometimes there are just time pressures, especially in tournaments like Easters or like Press Cup or Sorensen. When you're working under time pressure, more often than not, there'll be 5 minutes left of prep time, 5 minutes of prep time left, and you have one or 2 points to write, and you're going fuck. Oh shit, it's recorded, right? What do? What I do is sketch out a structure sketch out this structure. I write on the top what things are true, what changes in our world, what are the consequences, why bad. And I explain that. So what things are true means what are the premises of this argument. And premises are usually things that everyone can observe, or they are the facts of the debate, right? So if you're talking about prostitution and you wanting to ban it, an argument would probably be because it generates the abuse of women, okay? And if you're making that argument, what I would put under what things are true is, for example, more than 90% of prostitutes are female. That is a fact that will be useful in proving the rest of the argument that I'll put in the earlier part of the argument, okay? What do I mean by what changes in our world? Each team is bringing a policy to the debate. And under that heading, what you're putting is what changes, or how does your policy specifically apply to that argument? So to use the prostitution example again, I would say under the first part, the vast majority of prostitutes are female. The demand for prostitution is a sort of generated conditional that, I'm spewing out the wanky debating words now. The demand for prostitution is a constructed sexist norm. Oh my God, that's so wanky as well. The demand for prostitution is a result of a sexist society. And one manifestation of that is that more than 90% of all prostitutes are female. What changes in our world? When we ban prostitution, we send a strong message to society that they cannot abuse women physically for their self-pleasure. So, I think you guys can roughly intuitively understand what happens under that heading. But what I also like to emphasize is when you're making an argument, you have to imagine the points of difference that, that your line of argumentation will have from the other team. So in some cases, a negative team might argue that banning prostitution might make women, might result in greater abuse of women because because prostitutes will now have to work in unregulated environments where they fear reporting abuse to the police, etc. If you're an affirmative team, you have to anticipate that, right? So if you're saying that you're getting less abuse, you have to anticipate that the negative team will see the world in a different way and respond to that accordingly. It's easy for me to say, but it's obviously difficult to anticipate. But what helps is taking a step back from your arguments and wondering, does the negative team see this world in a different way? And what do I need to say to counter that worldview? So, for example, if you're claiming you reduce abuse, negative team says, but you go underground, more abuse. The smart you will think in prep, they're going to say more abuse, so we're going to make prostitution decriminalized and women not get punished for being caught as prostitutes so that they wouldn't fear reporting abusers to the law. Does that make sense? Yes! Okay, consequences. Intuitive. People get abused less. That's the sort of thing. But the important thing that I like to emphasize here is you also have to explain why your consequences are significant or bad in the, or like bad, good, whatever, in the debate. You don't just have to prove consequences, you also have to frame a consequence as significant. So, if you're making an argument about abuse, you have to talk about reducing abuse as the single most important thing in this debate because it affects a lot of people, because it hurts them intensely, because it happens very frequently. So you have to play up with consequences and explain why they are significant. And here again, you have to be comparative with their benefits. So if you are a team who's claiming reduce abuse, and they are a team that claims we get more tax dollars, the way you frame that clash and win that clash is to talk about feelings, right? And to say reducing abuse is so much more important than giving some dollars to each person within the country. Like, I'm getting a bit vague here as well, but you have to be comparative with your benefits and their benefits. Okay, now we can get a bit more concrete. So, I've armed you guys with skills. If you were a fighter jet, you now have some missiles on your wings. And you also have some fuel. But you also need a pilot. And a pilot must have a checklist. What the fuck? I sound like I'm drunk. So, what do you do with the skills? You identify the debate. You form a strong imperative. You deal with the other team's imperative. You must be clear about what you're going to do, and you have to be comparative in your argumentation. Anticipate where they'll see the world differently, and anticipate the different sorts of benefits they will bring to the table, and dismiss them as soon as you can. Make sure you do this in the debate that you're going to have. That's very, very important. And what I mean by this last bit, which is like do this throughout the debate, is I understand that the vast majority of this presentation has sounded like what you should do as a first affirmative speaker and what you should do as a first negative speaker. And that's largely true. But no one is perfect. A first affirmative speaker or a first negative speaker, even if he or she is the best speaker in the world, will miss something out. They will miss a part of their imperative. They will miss dealing with the other team's imperative. They will have areas where they simply don't have time to give examples. They won't have time to explain what precisely you are going to do. There will be times where they aren't comparative in their argumentation. You as a second or third speaker have to identify those areas and fix those things. So if you're sitting down there while your first speaker is talking and you think, hey, our imperative isn't very strong, it is incumbent upon you, if you want to win the debate, of course, but otherwise, if you want to have fun, like, you just have a laugh, to fix those problems. So yeah, it's not like a first speaker thing, it's a team thing. What time's the pizza break? Yeah. Okay. Practice skills. Because it's the end, right? Like, let's go back. Questions in the meantime? Questions? Yeah, no, it's like a presentation that doesn't really lend well to questions. So let's do more stuff. Let's do this one a bit more. Let's do a perspective exercise. So what sort of person would you be? Let's say the emotion is sorry. Motion. This house would ban whaling. You know, like spearing whales and stuff. Okay? If you're on the affirmative team, what sort of person would you be in the real world? Yeah? Can you give me an example of Greenpeace? And if you're someone who's opposing whaling, or no, who's fine with whaling, what sort of person might you be? Sorry? Capitalist? Well, I heard someone else say something really funny. Japanese! Oh, okay, yeah. What justifications can you imagine a Japanese person giving for whaling? Don't say in like a racist Japanese accent.
I love eating whales.
Yep. Sorry, one at a time. Sorry. Hands up first. Yeah. Excellent. Sorry. Traditional. Sorry? What? Oh, research, yep. Okay. Excellent job on that one. Another motion. This house regrets the concept of the afterlife. What sort of person on the affirmative team would make that sort of argument? Oh, hands up first, like, hands up. Okay, atheist. Sorry? This house regrets the concept of the afterlife. Okay? So atheist, then atheist might think this. Can you give me an example of an atheist? Famous one. Are you famous? You are now. Richard Dawkins. And what possibly might Richard Dawkins say on this topic? Hands up first.
People spend their whole lives worrying about the next way in life and don't live this life properly.
Excellent. Someone, sorry. Yep.
There is no evidence to suggest that it exists.
Yep. Okay.
People aren't focusing on making this world better.
Ah, that's interesting. Good. Okay. You guys obviously have that side figured out. So, what sort of person might be on the opposite end of the topic? Be more specific. What sort of person? What clothes does that person wear?
Like, Christian people.
Yeah. Okay.
Like an apologist who, like, Judaism and invents a tenets of a specific religion.
Yep. Can you give me a specific person or a group? Who? Cool. I'm not sure who he is, but as long as you can visualize that dude in your head and you wearing his clothes, it's fine. So yeah?
Yeah. What do you define as the afterlife? Like, how do you define as in, like the Christian way, which is like you die and you go to either heaven or hell, live or...
Oh yeah, like it doesn't matter for this exercise, right? Like, roughly.
You like the Eastern or Western way?
Oh, I don't want both.
Your argument is like, we believe in like reincarnation. We say, you know, people should the benefit because people lack better in this life, but we can instead
Yeah. Like that really depends on how the affirmative team sets it up. It could go either way. So I have no real answer to that. So yeah, yep.
Making it work for something like less directly related to religion. Say, somebody proposing that being perhaps a person
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, would we look into debate what the link to their, doing self-involved or something like that, and that in terms of the
All right.
it was concepts of their religion which led them to do things.
Okay, good. Yep, no.
Not directly linked to that religion with pro or against simply for the sake of religion.
Mm.
It would be that action.
Yeah, the action, yeah, I agree. Okay. I think that's enough for this exercise. You guys are obviously very good at imagining who you are. Oh wait, we've done the tax one already. Okay. This one? Done. Okay, imperatives. The exercise right now is cook up the strongest possible imperative you can in like 3 sentences or less. Like, I know you guys are going to give me very long sentences, but that's fine. Just try to keep it short. The motion is this house would ban pornography. So what I want you to do is problem, trend, if you can, a tipping point, and like we've done everything we can to solve it, something. It's okay if you're wrong. Affirmative, so you want to ban it. Yeah. Oh. Anyone? It's porn. Yeah. Sorry. Yep. 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 Mm. Excellent. Someone else have a go.
As pornography technology grows more sophisticated, people will have less and less motivation to have sex with real humans, and then the human race will become extinct.
Strongest possible imperative. Good. Very, very good. Let's try the negative team side. Someone give me a negative imperative. You guys are very, very good. I'm having so much fun. Sorry. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Sorry. Okay, what's the... I want a trend and like a tipping point. Yeah. Oh, okay. Oh, it's okay. Yeah? Oh, by imperative, I mean identify a problem, say why that problem is getting worse, to the point where there's a point of no return, and that we've tried everything else to fix this problem, but we really, really need porn to fix it. No, it's doable. It's doable. Sorry, did you?
I was just going to say, it was bankrupt an entire industry, which would leave groups of people out of a job, which would increase homelessness and unemployment.
Oh, yeah. No, that's good. That's good. Okay. Yeah. Because there's so much porn, there are a lot of porn workers. Yeah. Excellent. Brendan?
I would say if you accept that the porn is a reaction to society's appetite, as a phrase, then by denying people watching porn, it will suppress it. It will actually repress their sexual nature.
Mm-hmm.
That will come out in adverse ways.
Mm-hmm.
So we need porn to satisfy society's question of
Yeah. It's very interesting. It's not something you'd hear like regularly, but it's like in a debate it will work. Yeah. No. No, it's good. Anyone wants to have a go? No? Enough porn? Ovindu? Sorry. Yeah. 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 Yep. Mm-hmm. What's the trend? Yeah. No, as in like a possible trend I had in my head when you were saying that is that porn is a way for people who are otherwise unskilled to make a lot of money when they just have a webcam and a computer. It means that people who otherwise would not be able to find work are able to empower themselves in an economic sense and like live the lives they want, right? And the fact that technology is becoming increasingly spread out and mobile means that more and more people are empowered. If you ban porn, you disempower all of these people, and that's a bad thing. So you can, like, good. You got, okay, next motion. This house would privatize universities. Imperative for the affirmative team. Yeah. Yep. Trend. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. Cool. The trend I had in mind when you were saying that is that universities are becoming more and more expensive to run, and we are reaching a tipping point where we see certain universities being forced to shut down certain faculties because they simply do not have the budgetary requirements to run them anymore. This means we have reached a point where our university system has only been able to cater for a certain type of student. That is unacceptable, and today we return universities to the bastions of freedom and equality that they should be. Let's do a neg argument. Problem, trend, tipping point. We tried everything. So you would not privatize universities. Yeah? That's okay, you can have a go. Yeah.
So the problem would be that you're starting to put a dollar value on education.
Yep.
And so the trend would be towards high quality only for those with higher incomes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The tipping point would arrive when those who are fully capable of engaging in that education are simply not able to due to their financial.
Yep. Yep. And we've tried everything else. Like, for example, the affirmative team might say, yes, university will become more expensive, but we'll provide scholarships so that the poor will be able to access as well. And then, like, you just say why that won't work. But so it means it's going to be more expensive because scholarship's going to cover everything or something. I know. Yeah. Yeah. Excellent. Good. Let's see. Okay, like you guys obviously have a handle on this. Excellent. I'm so happy. Damn, clarity. Okay, let's practice building models. So remember, when you're building a model, the first thing you do is state what you're doing. The second thing you do is imagine how that model will play out in the short term. And finally, you talk about how you think that model will play out in the long term. Okay, first motion. This house would ban all advertising. Affirmative. Do it. Yeah, I mean, you guys watched me do that debate in the exhibition debate. No? No? Is this too hard? I believe in all of you. Yeah. Good. Good. A star. Cool. Anyone else want to have a go? Like, I'm sure there are a lot of different models you guys have in your heads. Okay, let's make it more specific. This house would ban the advertising of luxury goods. Model, yep. Yes.
Can we legally instate some kind of a threshold on the value of the goods being advertised?
Yep.
In order for it?
Yep. Okay, how do you imagine that playing out? Oh, the process.
All right, so I essentially think that when a company buys to advertise,
Mm.
they submit a brief,
Mm.
and in that they quantify exactly how much
Yep.
these items they were looking
Oh,
for
okay.
buying advertising for is worth.
Yep.
And then if it's over the certain
Mm.
the government regulatory threshold,
Mm.
can't break it.
Yep. Okay. What happens after there are fewer luxury advertisements on TV and like everywhere? Yep. Well, yeah, cool.
That model would be essentially some items are necessary but expensive.
Mm-hmm.
So what you'd be much better in doing is assessing whether an object is necessary or not. So whether it's relevant to someone's life or not. And
Yep.
that would be a much better needs test.
Very, very good. Yep. No, that's excellent.
No, that's the point. You're getting more towards the definition of luxury.
Mm.
You're identifying what someone needs, not necessarily
Yeah.
what someone can afford.
Yep. Yep. I think that's a very good point. Sorry.
Or perhaps just the price relative to the general price of that.
Yep. Okay. Yep. Sorry, yeah, Tim. Yep. Sorry. No, you're not Tim. Sorry. You're not Tim. You're Vito. Sorry. Okay. Yeah.
So I'm just thinking that I will do that. I will reduce and discourage how the company encourage like sell 50%
Yep.
all the time.
Yep.
Because this was encouraged us to
Mm.
buy some stuff,
Mm.
some unnecessary stuff.
Mm.
So we're gonna remove that and we will expect there will be less consumerism in
Yep.
that sense.
Mm. And the outcome is?
It will be better for consumer because they're not being fooled by the company to encourage them.
Very good. Yep. So, like, obviously the easiest part is to state what policy you're doing. The more difficult part is sort of visualizing very clearly how it'll play out. Sorry, is Pizza here?
Yeah, it is, but we have a sign-up sheet.
Sign up sheets. Okay. One more before we're done. Give me a motion. Chuck a motion at me. Anyone?
I'm a very good thinking of things.
Yeah? What's the last debate you did?
What about vampires?
Okay. Yep. Thank you. Assuming vampires exist, this house would hunt and kill all of them. Give me the F imperative. No, give me the F model. Yeah. No. How will you kill them? Yeah. How do you as a government visualize killing of them? Wait, sorry. Yeah? Good. Good. How do you visualize the vampires responding? Mm-hmm. And the outcome of either of those two things is, they'll be underground or exterminated. Excellent. Negative imperative. Oh no, negative model. You're the vampire lovers. What do you do on the neg instead?
Register on a list and say they exist and take credit and not kill anyone.
Okay. Do you think all vampires will register?
They might have to, or they have to eat garlic.
What's the outcome?
Peaceful vampire relationship in vampires.
Okay. One more if there's anyone. Yep. Okay. Okay. Yep. I agree. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy your pizza break.